book that's not yet published, a sneak preview. It's called All Homes Are Away from Home. I'm going to read a very brief section of a scene where a woman from England who has gone to Canada, got married, had a family, and then got divorced, takes her children back to England. She's uncertain whether she wishes to remain in Canada, so she takes the children back to England, and they wander around England sort of looking for where they belong for a while. And this is narrated from the point of view of the oldest child, who is a 9-year-old boy. It's set 2 or 3 decades ago, but probably nothing here would have changed very much. A curve in a country road led us to a wrought iron gate. As we drove through the gate, I glimpsed a gold-lettered blue sign identifying the vast red brick building at the crest of the hill and the parkland spreading around it as a boarding school for boys aged 7 to 13. My mother parked in the gravel lot at the side of the building. We walked in the front door and down a shadowed entrance hall as wide as a road. An 8-foot grandfather clock stood dwarfed against one wall. On the wall opposite, a large map of England and the world was festooned with small flags bearing English surnames. Most of the flags had been stuck into parts of southeast England. Some, there were, I learned, boys from abroad, claimed corners of Africa or the Middle East as home. A tall woman walked towards us. A shaft of light, falling past a twin tier of balustraded balconies, cast a glimmering runnel along the woman's hairline. Her protuberant forehead duplicated the swell of my mother's forehead. The similarity passed as the light changed. My mother introduced Deirdre and me to our Aunt Constance. "You are young," she said, surveying my mother. Keeping pace with 200 boys had lent Aunt Constance a brisk manner. She looked me up and down. "Are you keen on sport?" "He's keen on baseball," my mother said. "We don't run to baseball," my aunt said, leading us up the huge open staircase towards the upper floors. "We do have cricket, though. And football, rugby, tennis, table tennis, swimming." That afternoon, we toured the grounds in the company of Aunt Constance and Uncle John, a lean, schoolmasterly man. Their 4 children, our cousins, were away at other boarding schools. "This is the football pitch, Oliver," Uncle John said, in response to my having mentioned that I'd played soccer in the schoolyard in the Ottawa Valley at recess. Boys in uniform shorts pursued a soccer ball under the barking supervision of a burly man whose wedge-like hips and huge rump strained his own shorts to bursting point. "Good ball, Jackson," he shouted in response to a deft pass. "Pick it up, Brown, send it ahead, lovely ball. Yours, Peterson." "Oh, bad ball, Peterson, bad ball. That's the second time you've done that. You're simply useless, Peterson." Peterson, a blonde 7-year-old who ran with padding baby steps, burst into tears. We ate supper in a hall half full of boys. Many of them were my age, yet with their potato-fed pallor and disregard for their creased blazers, grubby gray sweaters, and twisted, identically patterned ties, they belonged to a different race. They spoke a slang I could barely understand: refec, prep, prefect. One of the boys had failed to clean his plate the night before and ate standing up as a punishment. The others ignored him. Nothing could rock these boys' certainties. They would never hear their vowels shift in deference to another speaker's assertion, would never, perhaps not even those boys sent home to school by parents posted to Abu Dhabi or Kenya, wonder where home was or be short of a ready answer to the question of whether they belonged to England. Such certainty struck me first as arrogance, then as evidence of insertion into an assembly line so merciless that self-knowledge would be not only unattainable but potentially lethal. Absolute knowledge of where you belonged, I decided, bordered on absolute ignorance of who you were. There was a price to pay for having a home. The next afternoon, I was sent to play tennis with a group of boys on the grass courts below the expansive French windows of the Oak Room, where receptions were held, and the narrow oblong windows of Uncle John's study. I had never played tennis. I gripped the racket with both hands and gave the ball a mighty swat, driving it, on the rare occasions where I made contact, over my opponent's heads, out of the court and to the edge of the windows of the Oak Room. My technique and my Montreal Expos baseball cap led the 3 boys with whom my aunt had arranged for me to play doubles to call me Baseball. When they realized whose nephew I was, they asked me where I came from. For the next few minutes, they addressed me as Canada. Finally, one of my opponents asked, "What's your Christian name?" I thought for a moment. I had noticed the pervasiveness of religion in this school, where morning chapel occupied a central role. I decided that a Christian name must be some sort of religious code name that the boys were given in church. "I haven't got one," I said. "Caw, no Christian name." The boy waved his racket to attract his partner's attention. "You hear that? He's got no Christian name." "Caw," the partners stared at me across the net. "Are there a lot of people in Canada with no Christian names?" I don't know anybody who's got one." My partner hesitated. He asked me if he could call me by my last name. I said that was fine. We agreed that we would all address each other by our last names. A few minutes later, I was called into Uncle John's study. My mother warned me that many relatives were arriving. We would be having drinks in the oak room. Bridge tables were being set up. Everyone, down to those a couple of years older than me, was drinking. The sight confused me. In the Ottawa Valley, where the population was divided into drinkers and respectable people, my mother was considered scandalous because she drank. It was one of the ways in which her life outraged the prevailing conservatism. Yet in England, it seemed, conservative people drank. Did this mean that English people were not really conservative, or that my mother was opposed to conservatism only because she lived in Canada? I puzzled over the enigma until an imperious woman with a high-pitched voice drafted me into a game of bridge. I proved useless at bridge and was soon dismissed. Aunt Constance offered my mother, Deirdre, and me dinner with the boys. As we entered the dining hall, the three boys with whom I'd been playing tennis called, "Oi, Ryan! Ryan, where's your hat, Ryan?" Aunt Constance looked at me. "Jolly good. You've made friends with the boys. This will be your home away from home in no time." "It's so militaristic," my mother said. "I do wish they'd call you by your first name." Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We will now have a second item on our program. We're going to hear Dana Francis and Don Webb.